Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with The Least Ideal Bruckner Cycle by Major Conductors. Oh boy, have we got some bow wows here. Now, remember, the point of the ideal cycle was to put together a list of really, really good performances. No weak links. They didn't have to be the best. There's no such thing as the best. You know that. But they were all really strong, and you could get a very good sense of who the major conductors in Bruckner were and what they were doing. Well, here you get a very good sense of who the people who have no business conducting Bruckner are doing, and who the major conductors who conduct Bruckner are when they aren't doing so well, because everybody has a bad day. And there's some really bad days here, some bad hours, hour and a bit. Oh my goodness. So here we go. Are you ready? The least ideal Bruckner cycle by major conductors. And if you want to put one together, feel free. I mean, it's really kind of fun to do, I have to say. Symphony No. 1, Valery Gergiev with the Munich Philharmonic on its own fabulous label. Talk about a cocaine hippo. I mean, in other words, something that was done just because they could, not because they should. I mean, what has Gergiev ever had to say in Bruckner? Well, obviously nothing, if you listen to his recordings. Talk about a waste of time and money and space. I guess it was because the Munich Philharmonic wanted to do Bruckner, and he happened to be drifting by on the podium. I don't know. Bruckner with a toothpick. That's what he is, because he's always chewing on a toothpick, even when he's conducting or giving interviews. I know from experience. Blech. All right. Symphony No. 2, Daniel Barenboim and the Berlin Philharmonic on Warner. This was his second Bruckner cycle. He did a really good one with Chicago. I mean, really, really good. It's his best one. I mean, hands down, it's his best one. Then he remade it all in Berlin in rather shallow recorded sound and somewhat just, I don't know, lacking in depth and vividness. And then he redid it all over again with the Staatskapelle Berlin. I mean, it's just ridiculous, crazy stuff. So Chicago's the way to go, and he did a very good second there, but the Berlin one, talk about hanging fire. Oh, boy. Just sits there. Yeah. Symphony No. 3, Andras Nelson's with the Gewandhaus. Oh, boy. What a bad Bruckner cycle that turned out to be, wasn't it? There's another guy. This is another cocaine hippo. I mean, it's just doing things because they can. Why would anybody? There was a time when recording Bruckner was a special thing, because he was the province of a certain class of sort of cranky German specialty conductors, and other people just didn't touch him. Well, now everybody's touching him. They're stroking and feeling and grabbing and in a prurient way, it seems, because these people have just no sense of how the music is supposed to go and what it's doing and why it's doing it and how to get from point A to point B, which is always an issue with Bruckner. No, Nelson's was a terrible, terrible Bruckner conductor, and the cycle is an embarrassment. Speaking of embarrassments, we have so many to choose from. Symphony No. 4, Thielemann with Vienna Philharmonic. Well, now that Roger Norrington's gone, Thielemann probably should get my vote as worst conductor alive. I mean, he's just terrible. I mean, he's okay in operas sometimes. He does some good operas. But, oh my God, in concert music, he just doesn't have any feel for it at all, including Bruckner. Actually, I'm wrong. I shouldn't say that. He did do a relatively good Bruckner eighth for Deutsche Grammophon. It was a good performance, and, it only went wrong where he had ideas. And fortunately, he has very few. So in that performance, we were in business. But this Bruckner 4, it's just a badly recorded, clogged up, boring slog through the piece. I mean, the whole Bruckner cycle is horrible, but yeah, I mean, that sucks pretty well. That's on Sony. And then number 5, oh yes, Bernard Haitink with the Bavarian Radio Symphony Orchestra on BR Klassik. Talk about a snooze fest. Haitink did a good Bruckner fifth with the Concertgebouw way back when. And it was good because it was quick and it was light, and that was his attitude toward the piece. As he got older, he got slower and heavier. And the real problem with doing Bruckner Bruckner 5, especially if it's recorded live, which is always an issue, is that you've got to have a brass section. I mean, you've got to have a brass section that has the stamina to play the big chorale at the end of the symphony, because as Eugen Jochum pointed out, nothing happens in Bruckner's Fifth until the last 5 minutes, and it's 75 minutes long. So you've got to keep it interesting till you get to the last 5 minutes, and then when you get to the last 5 minutes, you got to blow the roof off the concert hall. Well, this is a performance where they just they just conk out. In fact, they conk out in the first 5 minutes of the symphony, which means the last 5 minutes of the symphony are going to be extremely more conked. It is a blot on Haitink's career as a Brucknerian. Yes, definitely. And speaking of blots, boy, we're doing well here. One thing sort of leads to another with a nice flow, something that Bruckner never actually achieved in his symphonies, is it? I mean, Bruckner just had pauses, but we're just floating along. Symphony No. 6, Karajan in the Berlin Phil on DG. This is his worst Bruckner performance, part of his Bruckner cycle. He never got this symphony. I'm not sure why he didn't get it, but he didn't. And he found the rhythm in the first movement rather confusing, and so did the orchestra, because at the moment of recapitulation, it all slightly starts to come unwound a little bit. They're all going yum, but da 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 dum, but da 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 dum, but da 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 dum. But there are all these sort of conflicting rhythms, and they get bogged down in the quagmire of Bruckner's, rhythmic 2 versus 3 thing. And it's just not Karajan at his best, or the orchestra at their best. It's really kind of embarrassing. Actually, I was shocked by it. I really was. So there you go. It's not a horrible performance, of course not. Karajan and Bruckner was always decent, but it's their worst, and it's certainly not ideal. And we've got great Bruckner 6 by a whole host of people, including a lot who don't even normally do Bruckner. So that was a puzzle. And so is Symphony No. 7 with Colin Davis and the Bavarian Radio Symphony Orchestra on Orfeo. This was a live Bruckner 7th. Davis noticed, smart man, that the 7th Symphony is structured in a way that is rather top-heavy. That is, you have 2 big, long, slowish movements, followed by 2 much shorter movements, the scherzo and the finale. Now, the scherzo and the finale actually kind of combine to be a counterpoise to the big, long, slowish first movement. And it works if you think of the piece more as tripartite than quattropartite, or whatever you would call it. But, it works perfectly well. Davis, however, was not content to do it that way. And so he switched the order of the inner movements. He plays the scherzo second and the adagio third. And that is, so profoundly wrong and uncalled for, and a cop-out, because, you don't have to do it. If you know the work and you love the work and you see what Bruckner wrote, then it's your job as a conductor to deliver what the composer intended. Now, of course, all conductors diddle things. I mean, look at Stokowski. I mean, gosh, people do crazy things sometimes. You can cut, you can rearrange, you can do things, but switching the actual macro structure of the piece around, as Davis does, is kind of a bridge too far, in my view. I think that's really a little bit crazy. And so that is certainly a not ideal Bruckner 7th. It's one of the least ideal Bruckner 7ths out there, especially since it materially misrepresents what the symphony is, which I think is kind of amusing, but, that's why it belongs in this list and, not in another one. Anyway, Symphony No. 8. This one may shock you. Jochum with the Staatskapelle Dresden on Warner. Now, this is what's interesting about Jochum and Bruckner. He was a fabulous Bruckner conductor. He really was. And devoted and as loving as can be, but he never got the 8th. He didn't. His interpretation was similar to another person who never got the 8th, Furtwängler, who was far too twitchy and neurotic in that piece. And so is Jochum. Jochum's performance is, I don't know how to describe it. It's fast, it's slow, it's almost afraid of the work's monumentality, as was Furtwängler. And the orchestra doesn't seem totally at the top of their game, and the sonics weren't even very good. It was the weak link in Jochum's otherwise stupendous, fabulous Staatskapelle Dresden Bruckner cycle. I mean, the seventh is one of the reference recordings. The ninth is one of the reference recordings. They're superb, but somehow the eighth was just an off day. And there was something about that work that is something about the eighth that otherwise fine Bruckner conductors sometimes just don't get. Structurally, it's kind of the opposite, actually, of the seventh, because it has the two quick movements at the beginning and then two big, long, slow things at the end. And, the finale is problematic, and I just don't understand what precisely went wrong, but it did go wrong. And so while we have many moments of Jochumian loveliness in the performance, it just as a whole doesn't hang together terribly well, which makes it less than ideal and a wonderful candidate for this particular list. And last but not least, Symphony No. 9, Abbado with the Vienna Philharmonic on DG. This is just awful. Everything goes wrong here. I mean, the playing isn't very good. The sonics are lousy. Abbado seems really out of sorts. He was actually a pretty good Bruckner conductor. I mean, he had a real feeling for the first symphony. He recorded it like 3 or 4 times. But here in the ninth, his Bruckner light approach totally goes off the rails with this orchestra. It really, really does. And this is amazing because Giulini had recently, a few years previously, recorded, one of that glorious, massive, magnificent Bruckner ninth, where you feel that everybody is totally 100% on top of their game and behind the conception, that grandiose conception of the work. Well, Abbado was not into grandiose. He was a sort of micromanager, pint-sized kind of guy when it came to some of these pieces. And the Bruckner ninth just shows what a train wreck happened in some of these live performances. And some of his Bruckner was beautiful on DG. He did a great Bruckner fifth. There were some fine performances there, but this one is the nadir of his Bruckner career. And as such, a perfect capstone, a defective, lopsided, ill-balanced capstone to this monumental survey of the least ideal Bruckner cycle by major conductors. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.